So the conversation that changed everything for me was a seemingly ordinary call from my mum, but it made something just click inside me and it helped me quit vaping. And I haven't looked back since. But just as important as the call was what was happening before that created the fertile ground that let this conversation have such impact. So the irony of it all back then was while I was vaping, I was creating a short documentary film for my master's dissertation on the economics and the youth perspective on the rise of youth vaping. And my friends were like, 3, 4, 5, 6 months in, they were like, you're not still vaping, are you? And I was like, wow, yes, but it's research, it's research. Come on, relax. But obviously there was this conflict because on the one hand, I had all the information I could possibly want on why not to do it. Yet I was still doing it in the elevator of the library or in the changing room of the gym. Back in my mind, it was just like, well, you're an idiot. Why are you still doing this? And it felt like I was carrying a backpack full of weights around. And each time I bought one on the way home from work, it was just like, oh God, you're doing it again. Why? Even to the point that I was sitting in the library reading a story about a girl who died because of her lungs collapsed from vaping, crying with a vape in my hand. But then a few days later, I was in the parks on a bench, sun is shining, lovely weather, but I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about, am I going to crumble and have a vape? And then my mum rang me up randomly, and I remember having a conversation and deciding that I am going to vape. So I was bringing it to my mouth, and she must have heard the pause in the conversation because she was like, you're not still vaping, are you? And I was like, no, no, no. And something just clicked. So I threw it in the bin and I haven't looked back since, but it was just like taking the backpack off. And I was like, oh, there's no way, this is what it's meant to be like. It wasn't that, oh, I really want to, but I shouldn't. It was like, I don't want to do it. It doesn't appeal to me. But this wasn't just the conversation that changed everything because of that. Because the more I spoke to my mum and told her about what it was like to be a young person, to witness this new addiction just appear, the more I realized that all these feelings of stupidity and weakness and blame just narrows the view within which we see addiction and it blinds us from seeing the patterns that these feelings happen to thousands and thousands of people, young people and children. And the common denominator isn't that they're weak or stupid or snowflakes. The common denominator is the economics that allowed a colorful flavored nicotine product that got popular on TikTok to be the defining characteristic of our high streets. And this was the starting point for the addiction economy research project I'm now doing with my mum, where we zoom out from the individual lens of addiction and draw attention to how the people that shape our physical and digital environments are ultimately responsible for the addiction that we see at a societal level. And hopefully we can use this lens to open up more conversations about addiction without the blame and the stigma by acknowledging the role that the economics has in driving these problems for all of us. And push for the kind of change that deep down we all secretly want. Local areas that offer spaces for community connection and happiness, and to demand better than the current trajectory that is spiraling addiction, mental health, and isolation. Because we can do better than this, and it starts with talking about it. Because if we don't, all we're doing is sitting there in the front row in collective silence, watching addiction and mental health grind the country to a halt. We can do better, right? No?